If you've never used Photoshop Elements before, this is probably not a bad place to start. I'm going to take you on a quick tour of the icons that are on the left-hand side here, and in the next video I'll take you on a quick tour of what's up here. So, the first thing to know about Photoshop is that everything happens in layers. On the base layer here we have the picture that we've just opened. By default, Photoshop names that background, and the background layer is locked. Almost always when I open an image in Photoshop, I'll double click on that. It'll give it a layer name. In this case, I'll call this Save Your Background. And this selection tool will allow us to choose what's on that background. That's not very exciting. Control Z, as with most other programs, means undo. I've got a layer above here. If I select the layer, I can move that. One of the nice things about Elements is that if you click on something, you can move it. Photoshop Elements recognizes that when you click on something, that's the thing that you want to choose. Let's just create another object in a new layer. So to create a new layer, I'm going to select Control-Shift-N and Enter. I'm going to make a shape. I'm going to fill that with a color. You can see now that when I go up here, I'm choosing this layer, and when I go down here, this layer is already chosen. So this is a nice feature in Photoshop Elements that you don't find in other versions of Photoshop. So here we have Xavier, and we know that this tool, the Move tool, is useful for moving elements around. If you want to go to this tool with the keyboard, you just type the letter V. Now, a word of caution, in my experience anyway, Elements doesn't always recognize that you've chosen the letter V. Sometimes you have to come up and click here. This is the Hand tool, and the Hand tool is not doing anything right now because we have a full view of this. But if we zoom in, we want to pan around the image, the Hand tool is right there. Let's go back to the Move tool, V, and press the space bar. So you don't really need to go all the way over here with your mouse, click on the Hand tool or press the letter H, when all you really need to do is just press the space bar. The Rectangular Marquee tool is useful for what we did earlier. This box in here was created using the Rectangular Marquee tool, and I'll show you why and how right now. Instead of going down to a shape creation tool, I just want to develop things freeform from scratch. So I've chosen the Marquee tool, pressing the letter M, and I've dragged a shape. Control-Shift-N to create a new layer, and I'll call this white. I'll press K now, which is the bucket tool, and I'll click inside this selection. Control-D to deselect, and invert to make that white. Up here, under opacity, I can just dial back how see-through this layer is. Control-T, and I can change the dimensions. And that's the way in which I made this box. You can see it's a little bit transparent. I filled it with a color, and it all started with the Marquee tool. Now, another interesting thing to note is when you press M more than once, you'll find that it goes from this Marquee tool to this Marquee tool. So with these tools, if you're just using the key M, or in this tool over here, the healing brush, J, you'll be cycling through the different tools, and that's something that you need to be aware of. So if this is on the circle marquee, to change it to the square marquee, all I have to do is press M. So if I've drawn a rectangle, but actually what I wanted to do was to draw a circle, all I'll do is press M again and draw a circle. Now, the next tool, I'll just click on Save Your Background, get rid of all these other layers. Here we have a magic wand. What does it do? Up here we've specified a tolerance, so we're choosing blue, this blue up here, and we're saying that I want all of the bits of blue that are joined or contiguous. And with a tolerance of 15, that means it's going to choose everything that is similar to a rating of 15. Let's make that 45 and see what difference it makes. Much bigger area, so there's a lot bigger variance in colour across here. I think I might need to go to something like 85 to choose all of that blue. But you can see this line down here isn't 100% straight. If I wanted to make a straight line, I'd go over here to polygonal lasso. But if I went to polygonal lasso and made a straight line, you can see that there are some areas of green that are above the line and some areas of green that are below the line. So it can be really useful if you type W, go to the magic wand, just play with the tolerance a little bit, and there you have that as a selection. Now you might wonder why you want to select an area like that. Well, one thing that you might want to do, let's press Ctrl J, and what Ctrl J does is it takes all of that selected area and it copies whatever is in the layer below it. Now, Ctrl U, and let's change the color. This is a little bit crude, but it shows you the general idea. Let's say that I had the feeling that there was too much blue in this image. I could just change that to purple. Some of you will say, but there's still a bit of blue underneath. What do you do about that? Now, here comes a little trick. Control A, V. Now, on your keyboard you have a left arrow and a right arrow. Press one after the other. The left arrow, then the right arrow. So what we've got now is we've come back to having that selection. I'm going to cheat, jump ahead a little bit. I'll go up here to the Select menu, Modify, Expand to Select, Modify. We're going to feather that. So select feather, and I'm going to put in a value of 2. I'm going to go back down here to the base layer, Control J, and let's change the hue on there, see what happens. It's a lot softer. I've actually selected some of the green underneath, which wasn't really my intention, but it depends what colour you choose. Let's say I chose that one. That won't be quite so obvious in a way. Now, the next thing I can do, just to make that blend in a bit better, is to go to Normal, Colour. Ooh, don't like that colour. How about Hue? No. The layer underneath is actually quite dark. So you can see how if I use the brightness of this layer on the layer underneath, it really brightens things up on that layer. Okay, so let's keep marching down the left hand side of this horizontal type tool. You can see on that description there the letter T. So let's just press the letter T, shall we? And we'll drag, click and drag. This is Xavier. the problem with this type here is that it's black, and you can't read that very well. So the first thing I'm going to do is change this to a heavier font, and then I'm going to go and pick the color. You can see I just went up there, set the text color, and I've gone and picked it. Now I want to do something else. If you have a keyboard that has a number keypad, press Enter on the number keypad. Let's select that again. If I press Enter on the QWERTY part of the keypad, all it does is put a carriage return in there, and that's not what I want to do. This is Savior. Enter on the number keypad is actually a different kind of enter, and what that means is it'll set the text. Now, let's say I want to resize that text. A really easy thing to do is to select all the text. You can double click in there until it's all selected, or you can press Ctrl A for select all. Now that the text is selected, go down here and change the size of that text box. Once again, on the number keypad, Enter. If I use the command Ctrl T for transform and I drag that, you can see how I'm making the text size bigger. Enter. Up here we can see that the text size is 313 points. Let's change that back. It used to be 228 points. So you can see how you can change the size of the text dynamically using Ctrl T and dragging Enter to set it. Okay, so that's a little bit about the text tool. Now, to be perfectly honest, I never use these other text tools. They're just a pain, to be perfectly frank. Don't bother. Alright, now down here, cookie cutter tool. Yeah, in the lineup of useless things, this is really cheesy. Target layer is hidden. Oh, right. So that just punches out a picture according to what the cookie cutter was set to. I think it's a bit boring, so Ctrl Z to undo, and we'll go down to red eye removal. Yeah, not a bad thing to have. We don't really need it here, but I'm not a big fan of red eye removal. If I want to remove a red eye, usually what I do is I go in and I fiddle with it until it's done. But the best way to remove red eye is to use a pre-flash on your camera, or to use no flash at all. It's much harder to fix a badly shot photograph than it is often to just go back and shoot the photograph again. The next tool here, the clone stamp tool, is one of the tools that made Photoshop as powerful as it is. Clone stamp tool is a fantastic little bit of kit. Let's just zoom into something like, oh look, there's a spot here, and I'm going to remove it. So there are square brackets underneath the backspace key on your keyboard. If you use the open square space bracket, you can see that up here, the word size, that under size, pixel count gets bigger for closed square brackets and smaller for open square brackets. I think here we probably need about 6 pixels. Hold a finger down on the Alt key, and now click with the mouse, left click. That same problem again. So click, and see, that problem's gone. Now, the only problem with what we've just done is that to the trained eye you can actually see that someone's fiddled with that. Even though this doesn't really look it, it's actually, this part of the face is a lot brighter than this part of the face. So what can we do? We can use the healing brush tool. So you can choose that with the letter J. Again, Alt. Hang on. Let's get rid of the top layer. We'll stop selecting it. Alt to select where you want to choose from, and click in here. And in one fell swoop, it's just blanket changed everything.